Sego, Sewak Webo. I wanted to address you today to explain a little bit about these adopted laws that has people a little bit concerned around here. The Mohawk Council a couple of days ago met an emergency meeting. We decided that it was the best course of action to take was to adopt provincial and federal regulations, laws, or protocols for the use and benefit of our community during this pandemic. So you have to understand the laws are interim. They don't grant any special powers to myself or council, but does grant us the authority to delegate that to the proper organization, which is the Emergency Response Unit. The necessity for adopting those laws is clear. We're in the middle of a pandemic. We have many people at risk, and the ERU needs to take certain actions. They need to have some legitimacy under some law. If they do not, then we run the risk of having outside agencies come here and imposing their laws and regulations on us in their way. So when you look at the ERU, the Emergency Response Unit, it mirrors a little bit of our customs and traditions. It's composed entirely of women, women whose only purpose is to protect their elders and their children and their husbands, brothers, and so on. They've managed so far an incredible situation. They've managed it so well. So council felt that they had no concerns over handing over this authority over to them. So our council here has full confidence in the ERU and the powers that are granted under those laws. When this pandemic is over, Kanasa Dagaronu can get together and we could start putting our own laws and managing it in our way. So in the interim, there's nothing to fear about this adoption of laws. It was absolutely necessary under the conditions we're facing. So in addition, we could use as an example, the Ontario government has recently asked the First Nation communities of Ontario to put up their own checkpoints to make sure that their communities are safe, limit access from outsiders from coming in. So we didn't need to be asked. We took the responsible step. We showed that we have a sense of responsibility towards our own community and its members. So this is partly why we had to adopt these laws, because we knew that our community would understand. Our merchants here have been very understanding despite some hardships and have remained closed because they took the health of their community as a priority for them. So I thank them again for their sacrifice and what they're doing. So we still got some work to do. We have a lot of coordination still. There's resources that still need to be sought after by the governments. So we have to do this in a way that's responsible. We've shown so far to our own members that this is what we're doing to protect you. And now we're going to show the outside governments that although we're a small community, we can do big things. And that's what we've done. We've even surpassed other First Nations. Some of the government officials were very impressed at how fast and how well organized we had become in such a short time. So they're even using our Emergency Response Unit and its structure as an example for other First Nations to follow. That is impressive. It shows that we've done the work that we needed to do, and we really put in the effort and the commitment to our community. Now, one of the actions the ERU is going to implement is the community access team. They will be mandated under strict guidelines under how to put checkpoints up around our community to make sure that we limit the unwanted traffic coming in from places that are highly infected like Laval and Ontario and some places in the Laurentians. So I'd like to explain a little bit more too. I know there was some confusion about the checkpoints and those that will man them. What we're looking at here is putting together a team, which I mentioned a while ago, with strict guidelines and behavior and so on. But we have to make it clear that these are not peacekeepers, they're not special constables. It's simply the Community Access Control Team that will be acting under the Emergency Response Unit. That's why those laws were so important to adopt, because it lends legitimacy to what we're trying to do. We got to make sure that the team, the Community Access Control Team, acts in a respectful and very responsible fashion to make sure that customers of any commerce here are not insulted and leave and never come back. We also want to make sure that they keep an eye out for anybody that might want to come here and encourage stores more and more to open. So, Community Access Control Team, are not special constables. They're not peacekeepers, but they are mandated by the ERU to protect this community at the checkpoints. So they're moving ahead on that while still coordinating the food security, looking after the youth, elders and so on. So they're managing everything incredibly well. Now, I'd like to also make my point very clear here. If you know anything about history and the pandemics that have wiped out entire native civilizations across the Americas, we've learned those lessons, that we've had no control back then, but we were going to take control of this situation for ourselves. So we look at the history behind our communities, Native people across Canada, and what we faced when it comes to pandemics, whether it's influenza, smallpox, tuberculosis, and the list goes on, and we're still here. So we've learned a lot of lessons, and we're trying not to repeat the mistakes. Some are saying that I didn't consult the people. I don't think I need to consult the people to protect them from something like this. Right now, the consent of the people will be necessary when we implement our own laws. So for those who are worried about free, prior, informed consent, well, I'd have to look at, see how these people have used free, prior, informed consent themselves. People like to criticize, but often fail to look at their own actions. So this is not a power grab. We're trying to protect our people. And instead of criticizing us, why don't you ask the one important question? What can I do to help? That's what you need to do. Because we can't get through this if we have people trying to trip us at every corner. It needs to be a combined community effort, because we're going to save lives if we can just put down the rhetoric just for 5 minutes. If we could put down those senses of division and work for a common goal, is to save as many of our people here as we can during this really hard time. Look at the examples around the world. Many people are suffering. They're dying in large numbers. I don't want to see us in those categories. I don't want to see us in those statistics. So try to work with us. Our community depends on it. Your very children and elders will depend on it. So, now we'll go on.